What is going on, Wolf Pack? This is your boy, the Wolf of Roto Street at Roto Street Wolf, where we breed and feed fantasy wolves at the rotostreetjournal.com. My first ever live stream of the summer 2020. It feels great to be back. I am thrilled, looking forward to those Sunday shows. Fingers crossed that we get a season. Obviously, has been one of the most wild off seasons in the history of football with COVID-19. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about how you might need to adjust going into the season. All wild stuff. But today, I can't wait. I'm going to be unpacking like a kid on Christmas. You know, when you first wake up and all your presents are when you're like 12 years old. That's like these DraftKings week one prices for me. I have not taken a single peek yet at these prices. So it's just going to be a live gut visceral reaction to what I see. I can't wait. But as I also want to do beyond just that, I want to cover some news. There's been a ton of important stuff, despite there being no real training camp and tons of material to dig into. We're seeing some news and nuggets come out that I'd love to cover before digging into those DraftKings prices. If you're tuned in on Facebook, YouTube, Periscope, this is my first time ever using StreamYard. It seems awesome so far, but if you don't mind commenting, hey, it's working, hey, it's not, I haven't done this before, so it'll be cool to me to kind of test things out. So let me know how this is going, if you can hear me, if the audio is fine. And of course, any questions you guys have, ask them as I go, because that's the other part of this I'd love to do is answer any questions you guys have as we go. First time in though, so I'd love to have any type of feedback, how it goes, any questions. Again, the more interaction, the better. Thanks so much for all those who tuned in already. Let's get into the news and notes, though. Let's get you some fantasy nuggets and get started here on the Fantasy Wake and Bake episode 1. Washington running backs, obviously the biggest factor right now in the news because Darius Geis has been released, deservedly so, had domestic violence-related arrest. And, you know, Washington, for all their faults, thankfully they just kind of just said this is unacceptable. Hopefully they're trying to signal a new page turning under Ron Rivera. Regardless, let's talk about the fantasy implications. I mean, the biggest name that has come out of this, Antonio Gibson, all the rage this weekend on fantasy Twitter and fantasy in general, and for good reason. There is a ridiculously sky high. I mean, Jack Miller, a great analyst, called him like the potential next David Johnson. This was before Geis was released, and his reasoning wasn't unfounded. I mean, freak athlete. Let's talk about this guy. 229 pounds, 4.39 speed, already just insane, but also had production on his limited touches, only 77 career touches. That's a red flag. We'll get there in a second, but 33 broken tackles on those 77. I mean, this guy could just remodel what a running back is. Now, granted, you'd obviously have liked to see more touches, more consistent production. Why wasn't he getting those touches? I mean, he was playing behind some talented guys, but if he's this next all-world freak, what's going on there? Could just be a classic case of misusage. That's what I hope it is. That's what I think it is. And the golden path is now here because he really has Peyton Barber. I mean, Adrian Peterson, we'll talk about him too. Yes, that's going to be, some reliability, some steady feeding. That's going to happen. But by midseason, if Antonio Gibson's just making play after play, you've got to imagine a team that is completely devoid of playmakers is going to want to be feeding this guy the rock. And you can get him in round 9 right now, round 10 even. I mean, he's going round 12, 13 before, which was just a bargain. But now, even without Geis there, he's still, 9 is very reasonable for this type of upside. What type of ceiling are you looking for in round 9 that rivals this guy? Yes, there's, Jordan Howard could get some touchdowns. Matt Breida has some pretty exciting electricity in a backfield that has nobody in front of those two. Intriguing. J.K. Dobbins, we're going to talk about too. I definitely could see being a league winner. But to me, Antonio Gibson brings that insane upside. I just love what he does at that price tag. So unless you needed a safety injection there, if you're just drafting all risk early, I think Antonio Gibson has to be one of your 9th round absolute must considers. We'll see if this ADP rises. A few other things behind the, beyond just the athleticism. You got Norv Turner's son, Scott Turner. Now, who knows if that'll be an exact translation, but these guys have religiously peppered running backs. In fact, even before Christian McCaffrey for the last couple seasons in Carolina, obviously, Norv Turner peppered his running backs 32% of the time. And again, before Christian McCaffrey, so that number's only risen. I haven't figured the math out quite yet. It's early. You see the title of the show. But still, They loved peppering the running back. We obviously saw it happen with McCaffrey. I'm not going to compare anyone to him, but set his own reception record in back-to-back seasons. So it is a staple of this offense to move the back around, to use him heavily in the receiving game. Antonio Gibson definitely could carve out, a running back receiver hybrid, working out with both groups, learning in both positional team meetings and everything. I mean, the guy could be that just joker piece for a guy, Scott Turner, who we saw finally use Curtis Samuel a little bit better as well. I just think at this price, it makes total sense, and it is definitely Antonio Gibson, a guy I will be targeting. And that doesn't mean I can't also go out and get Adrian Peterson, who could be the heartbeat to this offense in terms of just a steady rushing pulse. I mean, it's going to be another one of those things. Like Adrian Peterson, no one wants him, and he's going to run for 1,000 yards, 8 to 10 TDs. And I love Scott Barrett's whole upside means everything. And there's not really any of that to AP, although 2 seasons ago was the RB9, I believe, or at least 8th in rushing yards. It might have been RB19 was what the points per game were. But still, that's not bad. That's usable for a guy that's also going in round 10, 11, 12, and now probably guaranteed 250 or so carries. So that's what I think of Antonio Gibson. Let me know what you guys think if you're buying the hype. I see some comments coming in, so it must be working. Dominate, what's going on, man? Great to see you. It was a blast recording last summer with you, Erickson, all those guys, John. That was a blast, man. So hopefully we get a chance to do something like that again soon when this all calms down. Rip picks, Philip Lindsay or Jonathan Taylor. Oh, it's got to be Jonathan Taylor. And that actually is a great segment, Rip picks. Redraft, obviously Dynasty. I mean, that's not even a question, but redraft, it's not even close to me. It's Jonathan Taylor. And that's a great segue. So why don't we go into why is it no brainer? Jonathan Taylor is the next thing on the menu, rookie running backs. I mean, already in the Athletic, like you got to tell me, first of all, you've seen the pictures. I mean, the guy literally did the arms, the flexing I don't even need to see the guy move to know this guy is just going to be a monster. But then if I do watch him move, look at the highlight tape. I mean, running a 4.39 at that monstrous size and produce multiple 2,000-yard seasons. I mean, the college production's off the charts. And this is one of those arguments where it's like, well, he got fed too much and he's been overworked. It's like regression candidates, like they're just too good. They have to be worse. Like I don't buy into that stuff. This guy is generational. He's he has the generational upside. Let's see him play before you label him that, but he's got the tools, let's say, to be generational. I had some great podcast guests, the Fantasy Football Wolves series. If you haven't tuned into those, check ffbdpod.com out. One of them, Pat Fitzmaurice, the second best ranker in Fantasy Pros rankings. Wonderful guest. We talked about best ball, an awesome show. His bold prediction was Jonathan Taylor leads the league in rushing as a rookie. Oh, good Lord. I mean, that is bold, and I don't know if I could subscribe to that. It was meant to be a bold prediction, but he was saying in round 3, one of his favorite best ball targets, and he's a Wisconsin guy, so I guess maybe a little bias baked in there. But this, again, is one of the most accurate guys, and when someone like him puts a stamp on it, and we've also had C.D. Carter on, he talked about the 700.5 rushing yard prop. Elliot Christ as well. Me and him both, CD, Elliot Christ, two very smart guys. We both talked about how that 700.5, like he could double that over under. Never mind to beat it. Like that is a joke of a line. I get Marlon Mack has been, labeled the incumbent starter, and Frank Reich likes to respect that, and it's going to be a timeshare. Please. Let's be real here. The great new report out of the Athletic that I love, that I'm clinging to right now, is Frank Reich, is not afraid to ride the hot hands. And we've seen that before. The Colts head coach and offensive play caller, if Taylor's given the defense trouble, he'll keep calling his number. Don't be surprised if the rookie has a few breakout games and Reich stays with him. Who does he get week 1 but the pathetic Jaguars? Like, you're telling me he's not just going to establish that hot hand from week 1? I guarantee you it's 60-40 within the first 3 to 4 weeks, and at worst case by midseason. Never mind the fact Marlon Mack does seem to get a little dinged up every single year. So all it takes is an early season injury for this guy to be unloaded. And once he is, there's no putting him back in the cage. I mean, he is one of the most phenomenal runners, just pure runners, behind one of the best offensive, if not the best offensive line in football. I think graded out as Pro Football Focus is number 1 entering the season. It's just a match made in fantasy heaven. So I'm all about Jonathan Taylor. I don't think him and Philip Lindsay, for that question, I don't mean to insult or anything. I don't even think they're in the same conversation, not even the same stratosphere. Jonathan Taylor is a guy that I'm starting to look at more and more, like as round 3, late round 3, there's that crew. Like I love Melvin Gordon there, and I still do, But the more and more I just think about Jonathan Taylor, it's getting hard. Again, maybe it's the morning show, the Wake and Bake, but I just am getting so hard to get off this guy. I'm all about him. So give me all the Jonathan Taylor. Anthony, what is going on, man? Great to see you. And thanks so much for tuning in. I'm still learning this, so I'm learning the banners and all that too. So I'm going to practice a few things as we go. So we already talked about, again, Antonio Gibson's huge upside after Darius Geis was cut from Washington. And then we just covered how Reich will keep calling Taylor's number if he gets that hot hand going. So what more could you want than Jonathan Taylor getting touches behind that offensive line? I saw something again, like they had the Colts maybe a significant less amount of touchdowns than, say, the Chiefs, where we're going to talk about Clyde Edwards-Helaire. But ultimately, they had more rushing attempts and more rushing touchdowns in that area, even if the offense was a little less explosive. So Jonathan Taylor has definitely been creeping up the rankings, approaching that Melvin Gordon, might even pass him. Like, why would I take Le'Veon Bell? What does Le'Veon Bell do for me? Does he excite you at all? Doesn't excite me. Shouldn't excite you. Get yourself Jonathan Taylor, folks. Absolute monster. But we just, alluded to the other rookie that I love. I love even more than Taylor. Actually, I love more than all but 4 running backs in fantasy. As insane as that sounds, that's Clyde Edwards-Helaire going to the Chiefs. And there was, the only thorn in the side, which, not even a thorn in the side, Damian Williams. Like that was the perceived thorn in the side. So, and yes, I am taking questions. Absolutely. SLM Inscriber Mag. Again, I want to reiterate that I'm going to be covering topics, but please get your questions in. I think I can even actually show your questions. Yeah. See that? That's pretty sweet. I love this new platform. My first time ever using it. StreamYard, you guys definitely have a fan right now. So well done. But yes, to answer this question on the screen, I will be taking questions. I'm just going to kind of go topic questions. So please send them all in. I'm happy to take them all. And if I miss it on the show, I'm happy to answer them as well on my feed. Just hit me up at Roto Street Wolf on Twitter, on Facebook, also newly on Instagram. So check it out on all those places. So Clyde Edwards-Helaire, let's get back to this guy. Maybe start from the top. I'm going to get back to the banner. To split snaps early, I say not. The Athletic recently reported, despite Damian Williams, opting out, unfortunate circumstances, and my best to his, obviously he's watching a huge fan of the show, but seriously, best well wishes to you, Damian. Your reasons for opting out make total sense. It sucks, honestly, to give advice like this at times where you're like, not celebrating, but you're like excited that somebody has a difficult circumstance with the COVID complications. But nonetheless, prayers out to him and the fantasy implications. At the end of the day, all that matters for us building our portfolios here, and while you're probably watching, Clyde Edwards-Helaire now becomes a top 5 overall pick. Only 4 running backs I'd rather have than him with Damian Williams removed. He already was like a fringe first rounder, like definitely mid-second target for me. I was already very high. You can check out our rookie breakdown at rotostreetjournal.com. Just search for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. It should pop right up. I'll also be updating it shortly after this. To reflect how high I have gotten on him, I would take him right now. I don't know. I bounce back and forth between this one, but like Mixon, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and Alvin Kamara. And I know most of you guys watching, like Alvin Kamara, no doubt. And I get it. He played with a knee tear for like 6 weeks. I'm starting to get back on that train. But let's just make the case. We're talking about Clyde Edwards-Helaire. The case for him right now. Andy Reid's offense has always, 75% of them have been RB1s because of sheer usage, especially in the passing game. Brian Westbrook, Jamal Charles, LaShawn McCoy. I could rally off all those stats for you, and they're all ridiculous. There's been very rare times that he's used a committee and hasn't had a genuine top 12, not even just top 12, top 8 back in those seasons. Kareem Hunt, his rookie season as well, if you think about just recency history there. And Damian Williams, last year even, whenever he saw over 70% of the snaps and got to that 15 to 18 touches, he averaged 20 fantasy points per game. He was the RB2 in those such contests. There's just the situation itself is perfect because of the Reid play calling, but also, of course, you're in Pat Mahomes' offense. I mean, this is the juggernaut, the unstoppable. How do you stop Sammy Watkins, Tyreek Hill? Why did I lead off with Sammy Watkins? Like, that's your 5th, 6th option. Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, Nicole Hardman coming into his own potentially this year. And then also Sammy Watkins, but at a 4, like, what are you doing? How do you stop that type of firepower when you have the best quarterback to probably ever play this game as a diehard Pats fan, just at least singularly talented? And he seems to have that mindset too, that grind mindset. So it's hard to accept that somebody might be able to challenge Brady and all his ridiculousness, but man, Mahomes. So you get this offense that's just absurd, insane. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to be kind of that heartbeat. You have all the speed around him. That's kind of the complaint. Oh, he's not that fast. Doesn't have the breakaway gear. He's not drafted to be that. He's drafted to be this engine, that churning, that quick little. He's going to dust every single freaking linebacker he sees in coverage. Graham Barfield, one of my favorite analysts, another great show we had. He talked about how this is the best route runner that he's seen since Christian McCaffrey out of the backfield. Just an insane, ridiculous ability to set someone up and then cut the other way. And you watch him for a second, and it's true. And Joe Brady used him in those kind of complex ways, moving him around. So he's experienced in that. He's going to be able to pass block. The Chiefs use their backs in pass protection. I believe it was the second or third lowest of any team, maybe even the lowest. I don't remember off the top of my head, but it all lines up to the fact that this guy's going to be heavily used. Pat Mahomes even singled him out as the guy that he wanted. So when training camp reports come out right now and say he's going to split snaps evenly with not Damian Williams, DeAndre Washington to start the year, come on. If that bakes any type of discount into his ADP, then please, for the love of God, I'll take it all day. I'll gobble it up if I can get him for a discount towards the end of round 2. Because again, I'd take him right around 5 or 6, considering him over Kamara. I bounce back and forth. I might lean with the floor of Kamara because he also has the ceiling too. But man, that's how high up he could be. And that's how high up I have him in that tier of running backs, not the next ones of Eckler's and one of the most important tiers, Mixon, Drake, Nick Chubb. I think Hilaire's a step above them. I do not buy at all these reports that he's going to split snaps early. Him and DeAndre Washington both knew this team. So if he's just that much better as he is, then he's going to get all the snaps. So this one's not rocket science, folks. All those fantasy factors you look for, usage, talent, especially the scheme and especially the surroundings, it's all just ridiculous. So all in on Helaire. Let's see what kind of questions we have here. Philip Lindsay or Kerryon Johnson in Dynasty. That's an interesting one. A lot of Philip Lindsay today. I had not planned to talk about Philip Lindsay at all this season. I don't know, man. To me, you're betting on where does he land next almost. With Kerryon Johnson, Swift is going to probably be that focal point in years to come whenever the Patricia era is out. He just brings more to the table to me. Kerryon, I don't love the injury. I love the way he gallops and his running style when he's out there, but I've never been a Kerryon guy, and I never will be. Meanwhile, I do love the way Lindsay runs, but he's a little bit more limited as an early down back, not great in the passing game, despite being great in space. He's not, as smooth as, say, Melvin Gordon, who's going to take all those snaps. So you're betting on Lindsay kind of lending somewhere next or Kerryon Johnson. It's a toss-up. I don't necessarily love either. I'd say Lindsay in the off chance that Gordon has a bad injury, it doesn't work out. I'd lean kind of that way. Michelson, what's going on, man? Good to see you, dude. A.J. Brown or Singletary? It's A.J. Brown. And I don't know if there's a price difference between the two. But ultimately, this guy, what he did as a rookie was just absolutely insane. Everybody's saying he's just so efficient, he has to regress. Why? The guy is just a monster after the catch and really only got half a season with Tannehill, where he became, the second best receiver behind Michael Thomas in terms of fantasy points from whenever Ryan Tannehill was starting, and that was on limited usage. What if they get behind more early and the scripts don't favor them? To me, A.J. Brown is one of the highest ceilings you can possibly draft in that late third, early fourth. I am no problem leading off with him as my wide receiver 1 going into fantasy leagues this season. If I can go running back, bell cow, and then get A.J. Brown, thank you for handing me an absolute cheat code of a team if my 3 backs hit. Because A.J. Brown is going to be he was already a wide receiver 1 for however long he was with him. He could only be ascending. This is not a guy that I see any type of fluke with. He's a freak. And if the usage continues to bump up, it's not like they added any real competition. Corey Davis is already on fuck Corey Davis, an absolute loser. Probably my most hated fantasy player of all time. Ugh, disturbing. But no, I'm all about A.J. Brown. And I like Singletary, but Zach Moss, I think, brings a lot to the table. And I think they clearly showed now that they don't view him as a true foundational 3-down back. And so if you don't get a true foundational 3-down back in a keeper league, it's almost always better to go with the wide receiver. They have a much longer, fantasy longevity, lifespan, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, I go A.J. Brown for sure. I'm going to take two more, then I'm going to cover the next Terry McLaurin for you guys. So we'll go to Anthony DiLorenzo. Great question. How do you see the Baltimore offense playing out? More passing, running back splits, all that. It's one of the hardest ones to project. And actually, that leads perfectly to my next segue. It's as if I planted you, Mr. DiLorenzo, future culture fantasy writer for the RSJ. Your stuff has been fantastic, and I cannot wait to get it on the site, man. But how do I see this playing out? Well, recently, out of The Athletic, again, that's where I go to for pretty much all of my fantasy, beat writer scopes. I love The Athletic. Anybody that's not using that, you're at a disadvantage. I know it's a premium service. It's for the price. It's one of the best investments you can make because it's so on point. We try to get all our beat writer interviews from The Athletic whenever we can land them. We've had some great ones from there. Their coverage is top notch. And I mean, last year they nailed Mark Andrews. All summer, the beat was Mark Andrews out of The Athletic. So I really like especially the Ravens coverage. I find to be really strong. I wish I had the writer's name off the top of my head right now. But whoever you are, I appreciate all your great work for the industry in the NFL. It's just fantastic. But Dobbins, last time, they're talking about Roman. We're going to find ways to have all these guys in. It's going to change on a week-to-week, day-to-day basis. They've got four guys, they say, they look at with obviously Dobbins and Mark Ingram at the top. And then Justice Hill, Gus Edwards, I can see pounding in for a smattering of carries. He had like 700-something yards last year. The guy is good. Gus Edwards is not a bad player. He's a good pounder. But to me, I look at this backfield, and there's only one that I really want at the price, and that's J.K. Dobbins. I've just raved about three rookies in a row. Call it rookie fever, whatever you want. But as Graham Barfield and me talked about in our rookie running back episode, according to him, maybe the best running back class as a whole he's ever looked at, and at worst second to that ridiculous one we had just a handful of seasons ago. It is stacked, and what's better about all of them is it's stacked, and almost all of them, save DeAndre Swift, landed in perfect spots. Taylor behind a Colts line, insane. Clyde Edwards-Helaire with Pat Mahomes and an Andy Reid offense like the next Brian Westbrook, but better, insane. And J.K. Dobbins going to this explosive Ravens offense that led the league in points, and particularly this Greg Roman scheme that is all about different styles of runs. They mix in zone, they mix in power, they go stretch, they go up the gut, and there's tons of pulls and pins and all this ridiculous wildest, the most creative run scheme. It's one of the most fun things to watch as an ex-lineman, to see how they use their guys. It's a joy. It's a treat to see happen and to see unfold. Second, maybe only to a well-executed zone blocking scheme. Lies still my heart. But regardless, it's so fun. And why that I'm bringing that up is because J.K. Dobbins does every style of run so well. I mean, the guy, that's what his calling card was. If you read Dane Brugler on The Athletic, talked about how versatile he could fit and succeed in any scheme, has experience with zone, with power, with stretch, all of it. And he succeeded all of it. The guy is a great runner. That's why he set records at OSU with a prestigious history ahead of him. And he balled in the biggest of moments. I don't have the stats right in front of me for the guy. But, man, the biggest games, the spotlight shone brightest. And he's already come out and said, too, I'm not here to ride the bench. He's like, I don't mean it cockily. I don't want to sound like I'm entitled. But I don't play football to ride the bench. I'm here to earn it. And of course, everybody's mindset should be that. But outright say it as a rookie. Shows some bold confidence that I love. Give me that mox. Give me that swag. I love J.K. Dobbins. So the fact that it's already flexible in Greg Roman's mind is a win for Dobbins, in my opinion. Yes, Ingram's great. Ingram had an awesome season. I mean, 15 touchdowns on only 200 carries, and that's going to be there again for him. But he is over 30. Yes, lesser tread. I understand that. But still over 30. He's had some injury woes, even last year. The last time a Ravens running back played all 16 games was Ray Rice in 2012. So, I mean, if that door opens for Dobbins, I do think he might be that next level, at least at this stage of their career with Ingram and him. And I see that working out great in his favor. I mean, there's something about him that just feels like a league winner to me. And if I take that shot in round 8 and he rides the pine all year, yes, it sucks. It's a sunk opportunity cost because there's going to be some people, Antonio Gibson we just talked about, who emerge in that range that do win leagues. But still, I can rest easy knowing I tried for that upside, because if and when he takes over this offense and becomes the focal point, I think he does, he's going to be unstoppable. And so I love that style of upside at that point. And last question, Tunenberg. Hey, will you be doing mock drafts for us like you did last year? If people remember it, that means it was a useful segment, and I'd be happy to. I love this new program so far, StreamYard. Again, my first time doing it, but I love it. So yeah, I think that's a great idea. And we're actually interested in maybe unveiling a service where like you could link up with me one-on-one and do a mock draft. We'll probably do it for free for this summer. You know, what's the season going to be, just to test it out and get some feedback. So if that's something you're interested in, keep your eyes peeled on rotostreetjournal.com, where we'll have like a calendar set up and maybe set up some times to just do mock drafts and one-on-one sessions to help us, you know, product evaluate and plan some things out. So yes, Tunes, I'll do that this summer for sure. I'll try to get back on that schedule. And I'm going to post a tweet after this last thing before we get into the next Terry McLaurin. I'm going to post after this just some like feedback questions. What time of day is best to watch a live stream? If it was in the morning, when would you want it? If you prefer night, when would you want it? Which platforms do you like the most? Do you have tips and tricks for me to learn? I'm still pretty new to this. I obviously have done a lot of streams on Facebook for those of you that are watching on there for now. I've been there for a while doing the live shows, but I'm more than open to learning all these new platforms and best practices. I just want to experiment in the weirdest off season there is. I'd love to try new things. So if you guys have ideas or ways that I could be most helpful, it's just great to know. But let's get into the next Terry McLaurin. Keep the questions coming, guys. I really, really appreciate the interaction. It's a blast. And it makes me happy we're doing this. I haven't done this yet this year, and it seems to be going quite well. So the name is down there, Brian Edwards, a fantastic piece on the site right now. If you haven't seen it, by Chris Jason, CJ, our editor-in-chief over there, wrote a fantastic piece on Brian Edwards. A lot of it on the back of a great interview we just had with Trevor Sikkema of the Draft Network. If you have not heard Sikkema, you have to do yourself a favor. I've had some great guests, and that was just like in terms of a flow, he just crushes it. Like it was such a great back and forth. Mostly his insight that he brought to the table was just insane, but probably the best nugget he brought. And then all these, the reports started to come out, but my favorite nugget, I asked him right at the top, who are your top 10 wide receivers for redraft and dynasty? And he's going through the usual names, Ruggs or Judy, but like 5, I hear Brian Edwards. Brian Edwards. I mean, the third round pick, like, what's the deal with him? And I'll be the first to admit, I'm not the biggest, I don't play a ton of dynasty. I'm trying to get more into it. So I don't evaluate rookies too much. I like to lean on others for that insight. I love Sikkema. I love Dane Brugler. Ray on Facebook, and on Twitter, your stuff is awesome for that. Like, there's great dynasty stuff. I'd rather not dig in and do all the film work. And I love Pete Davidson at Rotobahn, great film work, and Greg Kosel over at Fantasy Points. If you're looking for good rookie evaluations, that's who I use. And of course, Yards Created, Graham Barfield. All different rookie resources I love to use. Please feel free to recommend some of your favorites, or if you do some good rookie stuff, send it my way. I'm always into it, but those are some of the ones I love to use. But Trevor Sikkema, I had the pleasure to talk to. And he says, this guy was able to work out at the combine. He had some unfortunate injuries. He would have been a first or second round pick, said Sikkema. Literally 3 days later, Derek Carr goes out and compares Edwards to his former college teammate, Devontae Adams, because of the way they violently run their routes, the way they attack the ball, just the violence of the game. Oof, come on now. I love it. I love that. He's talking about how the ball skills, they all just kind of really thrive there. There's so much to like about what this big body athletic guy that he fell in the draft, but man, 6'3", 225, and some of this athleticism and ball skill action and the production too. It's not even just like an Antonio Gibson where we only had 77 touches and they were beautiful touches. This guy really, really got it done at the college level while playing with piss poor quarterbacks. So, when a guy like Sikkema, a great talent evaluator, has this guy above one of the best classes because of his landing spot, and you look at it, I mean, the opening is huge there. Only the Eagles had less production from their wide receivers last year than the Raiders. It was a wide open depth chart, and I get Ruggs is making some waves too. What a great player he could be, maybe in the slot. So then I tweeted this weekend, and if you got some good interaction, Should we be higher on Derek Carr? Is this like a season where Derek Carr could actually come back to that 2015, MVP style form? We're willing to kind of bet on Carson Wentz going back to MVP form because his weapons got upgraded, and I like Wentz a lot better. This is very light Carson Wentz. But still, like the surroundings, the narrative that helps drive up Wentz in addition to his own talent also applies to Carr. The question is the talent. Like, can he get back to that guy we saw back in 2015 now that he has the cabinet? If he can, I mean, there's some upside to Derek Carr, which is insane. If Bryan Edwards truly is that 2020 Terry McLaurin, and it's well within the range of possibilities when you look at the profile, you look at the athleticism, and all the reports of this guy's coming in so hard. He's not here to be the third-round rookie that learns. Like, he wants that starting job. You got to bet on it. And I like Mike Mayock. Some people don't like the guy. I love listening to him talk about his players, and he raves about him. So, man, I'm into it. I am absolutely into this prediction by Sycamore, especially for the fact that you just toss him a last round pick out. He's going to be on your waiver wires otherwise. Put him on your bench, see if he does anything the first couple of weeks, and cut him if not. But for keeper leagues especially, and Dynasty, if you haven't already drafted, definitely something to keep in mind. Alrighty, auction, and it will cost me 10 to keep. Oh, yeah, so at that point, you got to go A.J. Brown because of the free agency. Dobbins might have the least amount of pass blocking responsibilities of the rookies. True, yeah, I mean, they like to use their guys out, but the guy can get it done as well. Like, he's a great pass blocker. He thrives in it. That's kind of something they preach at OSU. So when you look at Zeke's and you look at these guys come out, they're so pro-ready. So I'm all about it. Tunes, am I wrong to have a hard-on for N'Keal Harry a year under his belt and having QBs who will throw to him? Depends on how hard we're talking here. I mean, there's definitely a reason to get a little perk. I'm not looking at full-on, yes, I like N'Keal Harry. We were all raving about him. He was like the #1 rookie receiver last year because he's got good ball skills. He's got good athleticism, 6'3" guy. And then you look at Cam Newton and the Kelvin Benjamin script and how he used to pepper him as a rookie, gave him, 140 targets, something insane. And Benjamin had his best year as a rookie. Well, Cam was just lobbing the bombs up. It's a matter of, is Belichick going to adjust his usual system to mesh with his players, which if he does, and I expect him to, that seems to favor a Cam Newton jump ball type of offense. I can see that for sure. Ultimately, I see what you're saying, mid to late rounds. Late rounds, yeah. There's a lot of wide receivers I like more than him. There's sleepers I would take before him, but I get the narrative. It makes sense to me, especially as the degeneracy in me's taken. The Pats defense takes a step back with the opt-outs. Definitely could lead to some passing heavier scripts. Good to note for Cam Newton as well, if it's just constantly up and down battles. I like that. So, yeah, I mean, great points made all around for N'Keal Harry. I get it. There's just guys I like better, typically where he goes. So I'm not fully all in on the guy yet, but I understand the narratives that could lead to him bouncing back. And if I end with him, I'll end up with him. But I usually go like a Chase Edmonds, for example, right there, a backup running back that, like, if everything bends right, suddenly could be a monster. Or another sleeper, not over N'Keal Harry necessarily, but a sleeper that nonetheless you got to pay attention to. I'm going to give you 2 from the 49ers here that have emerged. I know the topic of this was supposed to be DraftKings. It's been 30 minutes. We've just been shooting the fantasy shit over here, talking some ball and some important news. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it. I'm sorry if you came in for the DraftKings and now you're like, this asshole has wasted 30 minutes of my time. But I appreciate you coming in again. Feedback, always welcome. Let me know how it's going and how I can make the show better and more helpful for you guys. Jerick McKinnon. The Mercury News reports McKinnon has looked sharp running routes in his first few days of training camp. Intriguing to note, earlier this offseason, the Athletics' Matt Burrows said he was bullish on McKinnon returning to full health because he was really pushing himself beyond what he was doing the year before, and so far had been responding. And I loved some of the quotes I saw to, like, Jimmy Garoppolo, just throwing the routes on air. Obviously, you got to note that's not against, pressure or anything, but he's saying he has the feel of a receiver, the way he feels space like a quarterback. It's different than running backs that he has. And that quote right there, different than running backs he has, is very, very intriguing comment there, because of Raheem Mostert, not a great receiver. He can get the wheel routes, can do it, but not, didn't produce much as a receiver last year. And then you look at Tevin Coleman, always been a meh. But that's the thing about McKinnon. That's why you got that huge contract, a ridiculous contract in hindsight. But they signed him to such an expensive deal because of what he could do as a receiver out of the passing game. And we've seen that quite often with Kyle Shanahan and his backs, when he finds a guy that he can use in creative roles and moving around and all that out of the backfield, the screen game. I mean, Shanny loves that stuff. Even dating back to like Steve Slayton had monster years. I could pull up the list of Shanahan running backs, and a lot of people, the shenanigans, and now it's going to be a three-headed nightmare. It probably is. So how much value can you get out of a three-headed nightmare? But there's a three-headed nightmare I'm going to bet on. It's Kyle Shanahan for the production, the second most rushing yards last year, largely with nobody playing. And I do love Raheem Mostert more than the ECR. So I'll go in on Mostert and still take a stab at Jerick McKinnon, because if I can hit the right piece of this backfield, if one of them does end up taking over, then you're getting yourself like a weekly RB1. I mean, Carlos Hyde, a poor fit for this backfield, had like 60 targets and 50, more than that. It was like 80 targets and 60 catches, something insane. Carlos Hyde. So you're telling me this probably 50 plus reception upside if we finally get a healthy Jerick McKinnon. Huge if, of course it is. But that's why he's going as a free square. You can pick him up on your waivers right now, probably. So that's a 49er sleeper I had to point out. Definitely a last round stab. I put up there with the Bryan Edwards. Like if you need more running back, take a Jerick McKinnon stab. If you want a receiver stab, take Edwards. Obviously, dynasty, you're looking at Edwards in the ascending on non-injured talent. But a receiver too on the 49ers, Jalen Hurd. It's not the first I've talked about him this offseason, but 6'4", 225, strong yak ability. He was a running back over Kamara at Tennessee. Not a lot of people seem to remember that. And had 1,475 yards and 14 TDs on the same team as Alvin Kamara, at the same position as Alvin Kamara. And then he transitions, goes to slot receiver at Baylor. Kind of the wear and tear. I respect the move, to be honest. Let's see how it plays out for him. He just has a pretty good year. 1,155 yards, 7 TDs. If anyone's going to be able to capitalize on that, I know we had a year off last year, but if anyone can maximize the running and the unique receiver skills too, it's going to be Kyle Shanahan. All about it. You got Deebo Samuels laid up for probably an early part of the season, giving an opening to a big body X style. Not that that's Deebo Samuel, but they have a clear needed receiver. Let's be real here. And the type of receiver he is, we're getting some quotes already out of their players. It's inspiring to watch him give it all. He's trying to decleat somebody. He's a bigger receiver, probably the most physical I've seen tape-wise. And even going back out there, it's great to see him back. Like, that's the type of stuff that'll get you excited. So that's Jalen Hurd. So I should put the new banner up there for you guys. Jalen Hurd, again, drawing awe was the quote out of the paper. So a name to pay attention to, a late-round guy, a penny stock, we like to call him, that there's going to be opportunity in a good scheme and offense that's going to put up points. So it's worth considering his name. Write it down, put it on the list. We'll be writing it up as a penny stock list later. And the last bit of news that I don't want to spend time on, I meant to edit the menu this morning, but Lamar Miller goes to the Pats. Honestly, probably a best case for fantasy because Sony Michel blows. So it's like, yay, oh, shit. It wasn't a great option anyways, that backfield. Maybe value emerges late, but I'm not into it. Let's dive in now. I got one question here. Anthony DiLorenzo. And then we'll dive into our DraftKings segment. And thanks again for all you that tuned in, commented, asked questions. It's been a blast. Good way to wake up. A fun way to do this. How do you think the Jordan Reed affects Kittle, if at all? Not at all. I mean, the one thing is Kittle's such a great blocker. So I wonder if there's a few less routes run because they use him in line a little more because they have an athlete like Jordan Reed. But let's be real. Jordan Reed's probably just going to get hurt in the first week. No disrespect to Jordan Reed, but let's be real. He gets hurt every season. It's just a matter of when, not if. And so I'm not worried about Jordan Reed. Not at all. Not at all. So, yeah, that's not something that I am worried about. Let's dive in now to the feature segment. I'm going to share my screen here. And again, as I'm doing this, comment in any questions you have. So DraftKings, you can feel free to comment on the view. Like if you can read that, I'm going to take off the comment here. Looks like that's covering up some space. I'm going to go zoom in a little bit and let me know again if you guys can see this okay. The player names here. This is again my first look at the DraftKings prices. So I'm going to switch up to a new view here. Boom. That's kind of in the way too over there. So here's my minimalist view. All righty. So DraftKings, you can see my face. There we go. Banners. Let's hit our first look at this stuff. I'm stoked. And we're going to start with the quarterbacks, of course. Again, keep your comments coming in. It looks like it gives me an alert when they come in. I'm happy to answer it between positions, between whenever. But let's check out DraftKings and these prices. Please let me know too if you can see this all right. I don't want to like do 20 minutes and then be like, oh crap, nobody can see this. But to me, it looks okay. So again, if you have any questions. Alrighty. So Lamar Jackson, obviously the most expensive, 8,100. Cleveland, Baltimore has the chance to be a shootout style game. Not shootout necessarily because they're both ground and pound. So I feel like that game moves fast, not overly into it. He could score 3 touchdowns early, but I don't know that at that price. I always pay down in general in DraftKings. I like to find the value quarterbacks. And the first guy I'm actually going to look for is Teddy Bridgewater. 5,900. I already love the price point. I'm going to go back and look at some more, and we can talk about any that you see that you like. But I really like the 5,900 price point here. One, the match against Vegas, that defense doesn't look all that special at all. They have some track stars that could meet that. Ted Bridgewater, 50. Yeah, so they have some track stars that could keep up if it becomes a track meet style game. And then I love this offense. Teddy Bridgewater is my pick to just blow up and be that next style late round. Like, there's probably not going to be a Mahomes. There's probably not going to be a Lamar Jackson. But to me, that Joe Brady scheme, if there's going to be anybody, it's going to be Teddy Bridge. And anybody who's been watching my stuff at all this year kind of knows that. So I really like Teddy Bridge to light it up. I do like this game stack. Garoppolo, 5,800. If this air raid, Kyler Murray, only a few hundred more, 400. Great price. I love Wentz facing the 29th of awful Washington D. So there are some really good value plays. We'll see if I, save $400. Yeah, I probably will have Wentz higher in my week 1 rankings. Even Cam Newton, that's a juicy I can see a ton of people going that. He might be chalky at that price at 6,100. So all to say, I think this is a week to definitely go for the value at QB. And in terms of game scripts early on, I like Wentz to put up a pile of points on Washington early. I do like New England to come out, but Miami could keep it a little more competitive now. To me, I like the San Fran, Arizona stack. That could be the game stack, or I think you could get a lot of cheap options and get a sneaky shootout between Vegas and Carolina. So like Carr, 5,900. So right in that Bridgewater range, I'd rather have. But like this would be a game to like look, okay, what is Brian Edwards? Probably 3,000, probably nothing. 4,200. No, never mind. I guess these prices are pretty recent. So they do have these pretty up to date. Let's see what Ruggs. So 5,100. Yeah, it's kind of, getting the receivers on that side. What about the stack with Teddy? You always want to have a receiver. So Curtis, 4,600. I absolutely love. Let's see what we got on DJ Moore. Because I always try to, you got to have a stack. I mean, if you read one of the great articles I've read this offseason was Adam Levitin looked at all the like recent millionaire makers from the last 3 years. What kind of trends do we have? Is there any commonalities between these things? And I think it was like something like 87% had stacks. I mean, this DJ Moore price, 6,600, highly appetizing. This might be like a double stack game. That might be like DJ Moore, Curtis Samuel. I'm going to just start with a double stack, or it could be Ian Thomas, like 3,400. So I'm throwing out like that. When I think of DFS, you try to pick those games that could just go off. And this is looking like one of those ones that has the upside to become a track meet. Waller, 5,900. Good price on Waller. What's Jacobs looking like? Like this might be the game I just stack. And 6,800 seems to me like a no-brainer for Josh Jacobs, and that fits into this script we're kind of building here. So that's the start of like an ugly game, stacking that game up, and we're going to be left with some good money to get like who's going to blow up at wide receiver, who's going to be that 40-point running back, and some upside flex. Like obviously I'm going to change some stuff around here, but early on, I like this start so far. Let me know what you guys think. If you have any like must play guys. So I guess like it doesn't make sense to have all these banners because we're just going to kind of organically create these lineups here. It looks good to me, says Tunes. Thank you. So let's kind of look through though now, like player position by position. I gave you my quarterbacks I liked. I mean, it's always great to consider McCaffrey, but that 10K price range is tricky. You could that also lends itself to the stack. It would probably be tough to do DJ Moore and McCaffrey. Here I'm kind of creating a narrative where fading McCaffrey would make sense. He's going to get 20 points. He's going to get a touchdown. But if these other guys are going off, again, I'm not going to have 3 receivers, but I'm going to consider it a double stack. You got to love, a healthy Kamara. Maybe that first ranking it makes his price get driven down. I mean, Miles Sanders at 6,300. To me, that seems like a no-brainer. That tier of like round 2, like late first, early second running backs, your Ecklers, your Sanders, your Kenyon Drakes, your Nick Chubbs, like maybe not Chubb week 1, although he crushed Baltimore one year. The Joe Mixons, like this is the value at running back right here. As much as I love McCaffrey, I think my lineup, look at this shit. Like some of these elite RB1s that aren't being viewed quite as RB1s yet, like James White's within $300 of Miles Sanders. What is that? What are we doing? Miles Sanders to me is too good. And that script definitely favors him. And Devontae Freeman shows up maybe, but like I'm all about that price. Let me take out these other Panthers guys. I just wanted to show like a double stack option. But I'm going for like a millionaire maker. Like, do these guys have ceiling? Yes. Yeah, and I think they have the ceiling to, times 4. DJ Moore could totally get 30 points. The running backs to me, like, that's where some value's at is right here. Maybe I go Drake San Fran. He had 4 touchdowns against them last year. Obviously, that means nothing this year, but it's not like he can't do that against them. I really like – I'm going to have a hard time going away from like Eckler or Joe Mixon, though. Maybe Josh Jacobs has to come out here. If I'm being honest, I would go Eckler. And just like as much as I like the Jacobs play and it fits my narrative, I really like Mixon here. Those two are going to be man. Let's stick with the no. I'm tossing Mixon in there. Like I see these guys all being top 6. Josh Jacobs probably number 7. Like to me, you got to have 3 of these 7 to 6,000 range backs in your lineup for week 1. That's what I'm looking at least early on. And it leaves you with now I got to figure out, like, let's get my D in there. I always go, D is such a fucking Hail Mary. So it's like, which one of these options might just surprise? Could the Jets turn over Buffalo? I'd like a home team. The cheapest home team is Washington. Washington's defense isn't horrible, though. I mean, like, that could be a pick 6. The Jaguars against Indy, they're going to get steamrolled. I wonder what Jonathan Taylor costs after that rant we had about him. Helaire is going to be the Thursday night slate. So I need a little water to balance out that coffee. I'm just going to toss in Washington because it's like, let's see, they get a pick 6, like a crazy strip sack fumble or special team. Antonio Gibson brings one to the house on special teams. And now I get a picture of like, okay, I'm probably going to have to punt tight end. So let's see. There's always good like 3K tight ends. So let's look here. I mean, Kittle does get that Arizona just smash spot. I do wonder if that – before I do tight ends, let's hear what you guys say here. Anthony DiLorenzo, Samuel Truther, me too, brother. I think he's just been misused with the wrong quarterback play. So I'm fully about it. Any consideration for a Henry Ruggs blow-up game? You're looking for huge upside with low ownership. I like it, Kendall. I mean, I just talked about that Bridgewater, Carr, Panthers, Raiders stack. I think that game could get out of control and just have a points bonanza. Late game as well, cheap options to attach yourself to. I totally see the Henry Ruggs narrative. I could see Bryan Edwards at 4,200 being the guy. I want some receiving upside from that game. I think it definitely could have some upside there. And if you're watching, I don't know if Periscope or YouTube allows you to like. I know on Facebook you can give thumbs up. So if you're on Facebook still tuned in, thumbs up help, shares help. We try to. I love giving advice. Obviously, this is just to shoot the fantasy shit with you guys in the morning, but still, it doesn't hurt to get some shares and some comments in here too. Open to answering all questions we get live. And anybody that might be catching the later the post broadcast, hit me up on Twitter or Instagram, and I'm happy to answer all questions always. Sanders has to be a lock. Totally agree. That 6,300 price. What I worry about is is that going to be too chalky? You look at a price like that, a talent like that, a usage monster in that script. He's going to be chalk, but that's probably the good chalk, the chalk that you almost have to eat chalk. And when I say chalk, if anybody's not that into DFS, what I mean is the popular play, the guy that's going to be 50% owned. So when you try to win, big on those tournaments, you have to differentiate your lineup. But still, if you have not read that piece on Adam Levitin over at Establish the Run on his millionaire lineups, and you want to play and try to win that money, then I don't know what you're doing. You're doing yourself a severe disservice. There's always some chalk eating in these $1 million lineups. And of course, you differentiate yourself later. I think Bridgewater will give me some decent differentiation early on. I think the stack with Moore, my running backs are all probably going to be between 15 and 20% with Miles Sanders being chalk. But that's where I'm willing to eat the chalk. And that's where the study says it's okay to eat the chalk is your running backs if you project the right ones. So let's get back now into the tight ends. I totally agree with this comment right here that Hooper is overpriced. As Adam Capo points out, too, so many good options. I think you're agreeing with me too. Sneaking potential in that Vegas and Vegas Panthers game. But yes, this is a week. I mean, most of the winning lineups have 3 running backs anyways. I think this is a week you get 3 of those 7 to 6K. The value is there. And you figure out your lineup from there. That's where you got to start your building block. And for me, Teddy Bridgewater is a building block of mine. I'll go back to quarterback and see at the end, but he's my guy all offseason, and I'm rolling fucking with it. I think it's going to be a low ownership, blow up play. And I think stacking him with Samuels was a value I saw at receiver I liked. Let's look here, though. Jared Cook at Tampa Bay seems real juicy in a potential shootout at 5,500. I want to look at the cheaper options. I mean, Hayden Hurst, the darling, against a very bad Seattle team. Everybody's sleeper darling. It's going to be chalky because he's been such a good raver. I like I know it's a popular opinion, but I like the Cutter narrative. The guy literally comes out and says, I'm not going to hide it. I like tight ends. Tony G, not Jared Cook, OJ Howard, Cameron Brate. He does have a history of using his tight ends heavily. And Hurst, they don't give up a second-round pick for no reason. That's a high draft capital. He is an athletic freak. He's been working out all offseason with Matt Ryan and driving from Florida to go see him. And we saw with Hooper, when Hooper finally made that commitment, and I agree, totally overpriced, as that commenter said. I like Hayden Hurst way more than Hooper in week 1, probably more for the season. Matt Ryan again saying he was the fastest tight end he worked out with in his career. There's upside here. I think that's the play. Hawkinson brings a ton to the table there as well. I also liked Matty Stafford's price. Is there any smash cheap ones? Jack Doyle, 3,600 is ugly. It's not sexy, but you could get yourself 7 catches, 80 yards, and a TD, and at 3,600. That could be sneaky. Let's see what Devin Asiasi. We're getting kind of ugly here. Tyler Eifert, though, back with Jay Gruden, had that monster TD season. He could catch a score. That's kind of what you're looking for. What was Jarwin's price? That might be they might be the night game, though. I think that's a prime. I haven't seen any Cowboys, so that makes sense. Sadly, a big offense. That must be the primetime game that night. I'm gonna throw in chalky Hurst for now because I think he brings a little more upside to it. My bargain early on is Jack Doyle. I think there's no way you should be cheaper than OJ Howard. Gronk's upside at 4,900. He could definitely catch 2-3 touchdowns week 1. It's back with his boy and in a weird offseason. They're going to look. I think he definitely catches a touchdown. Oh, man, I like Gronk a lot too. That's tough. And I want some action in that game. That's one I think I want to target a little bit. I'm going to look at other options in that game, what's Godwin looking like, what's Mikey T looking like. But That's an appealing one. Let's save the 600 for now and get chalky. Let me know what you guys think, like who you would go. Ian Thomas chalk is what Adam Capo is thinking. 3,400. Yeah, that 3,400 price. You're right. I already pointed it out. Very good. Shocked Hurts isn't more expensive. I agree. I think he's going to be that kind of, that popular one everyone's going for. So again, is it chalk you eat? Because you could differentiate with Jack Doyle, or as again Adam Capo pointed out, and great interaction all the time, Cap. You gotta keep hitting me up, man. It's great stuff. I like that play if we need to end up saving some money. It depends if I go Curtis Samuel or not. I want to look and see what some of these wide receivers do it to it. The Mike Thomas is obviously a smash play at 9,000, but I don't think I can afford it, right? 2,200, nope. So I'd have to go cheaper at tight end if I want to squeeze him in. I'm going to just take out, I have to have a stack with Bridge. So I'm going to leave DJ Moore in and just on the off chance these two just light it up right from the start. Adams at a 1,700 discount to Mike Thomas has all the upside. Minnesota's secondary was horrendous last year, got no better. Adams seems to me like an absolute smash play. These prices are kind of suspect. That leaves me with 3,900. So let's go Thomas here, Ian Thomas. Say the big boy hauls in a touchdown. That leaves me 4,800. I could go to my stack there. My DJ Moore, Curtis Samuel, Ian Thomas stack. It's within the realm there. Let me just see though what kind of, when I had Hurston, I had 4,900 at last year. Let's kind of go to this all. Let's kind of look through these prices here, and take a holistic approach. Don't like Diggs 6,400. Chark at 63 is intriguing, especially because I see them getting down. But again, that's the same price as Miles Sanders. Like I got to make sure I get those three running backs in. Mixon could be Jacobs, could be Nick Chubb. Any of those guys, that tier has to be. You have to have three of those guys. That's the play. Week 1. Parker did roast Stephon Gilmore, but that could get tricky. Betting on that one again, first game of the season. I'll tell you, though, Edelman's price range right here, the one thing with Teddy Bridge is you don't like to ever roll your quarterback out. They call it naked, without like another weapon attached to him from the offense. At the same time, like, this offense is going to be all predicated on dinking and dunking and getting it out and letting people make plays. Like I would not be surprised to see Teddy, bold prediction here, throw 5 touchdowns, 1 to McCaffrey, 1 to Thomas, 1 to Moore, 1 to Samuel, and then maybe McCaffrey runs one in. So 4 TDs for Bridgewater. This offense just goes insane week 1. Now, that's asking a lot for a first-time coordinator, first year, to just light it up like that. But I could see that. So, like, running Bridgewater out naked, I don't know, is the worst idea. I feel like I have to have Adams in at this price. I see what Capo's saying here. Got to run it back with a Vegas player. It is GPP. Yes, I only play GPP. I'm going for the big money, obviously. Kendall, I like Tyler Lockett a lot. Like that, if that's the game you're going after, that could end up being a shootout game. So let's go up and just look at the slate. Like, what games could just go ham? Seattle, Atlanta, definite shootout potential. Green Bay, Minnesota could become a track meet sneakily. I think Washington, Philly becomes a dumping by Philly early. Washington playing catch up, so there could be some good cheap value coming out of Washington. What's Antonio Gibson? I don't know if was Geis like priced. So Geis was priced. So Gibson, 4K. Ooh. If only he had a receiver eligibility, that might become the smash of all smashes. Early on, he's expected to be lightly used because of pass coverage questions. But those are the type of upside narratives you got to check. Let me just kind of check in on some of my favorite guys here, like Taylor. How much is Johnny Taylor, 5,700. I mean, that could be like 130 and 2. Like totally at 5,700. Running back, there's just too many good options this week. Let's get back down here, though. And as you say, Capo, I might be running it back with Josh Jacobs instead of like Mixon to complete that element. Or I could take out like Eckler and instead. Although Eckler against Cincy, I mean, you're just asking for a field day. Come on. Let's keep going here. A-Rob against a very suspect secondary that lost their best player. This is a tough week. Like again, as you can tell, this is definitely the first time I've looked at it. It's hard to pay up anywhere because like A-Rob could do 120 and 2 things to that awful secondary that only got worse. Man, I love the A-Rob play. Obviously, it's going to be tough to fit all these guys in. I'm going to let's just X out of the receivers for now. And we'll just keep looking at like potentials I like. If Alshon's not going to play, Marvin Jones could give you that stack with A-Rob. I mean, he has huge TD upside. How much was the Kenny G? I love DK. I mean, if we target that game for shootouts, I like DK at 58. What was Lockett? I know, Kendall, you asked about him. I mean, I like Keenan. Why not get it done? They gave up a ton to some slot receivers last year. 6,500 for Lockett. You're not tuned in here to hear me say like who I like for a million times. I know that Sanders will be low owned at this. That could be an intriguing pivot. Johnny Brown could be low owned and light up that just no man secondary like that. I could see a 2 touchdown day. McLaurin 5,600, especially to fit that. Like so many people are going to go McLaurin Sanders to fit that script, but like how can you not at 5,600? There's just some smashes. And Baltimore, like what if you get behind Hollywood Brown against it says 6th best, but like I don't see that secondary as anything special. You're starting to get into like real flyer territory without like it's not a huge discount anywhere around here. But as I pointed out, I like Samuels as a potential cheap stack. I wonder what this gets me if I do that. Let's just kind of look down to Chenault. We talked about with Sycamore. I mentioned Brian Edwards. I mean, he's in the range of these just nobodies. Jalen Hurd, we talked about earlier. Like, there's a handful of guys at wide receiver that, but now you're getting into like, now you're at nobodies at 3,600. Like, there's going to be, why are we wasting our time looking at this type of thing? Like, I don't see anything 3,200, like the cheapest they're getting. So no real like free square quite yet at wide receiver. I think Brian Edwards and Curtis Samuel seem to pack the most like punch for their price right here. Potentially Russell Gage. Rager, a blow up early on upside at 4,300. I quickly skimmed past that. Like, that's not unintriguing. And then I'm left with 7,600. What happens if I go McLaurin? Oops, I meant to keep Rager in there. Let me get him back in. Rager. I'm probably saying it wrong. Sorry for all you purists. And if I go DJ Moore again, what does that leave me at? 5,600 at tight end. I don't think that's going to get me anything I love. No, it gets me Jared Cook, but again, so I'm going to take out. Let me go DJ Moore, Thomas. That's where we start to tinker. Ian. We get rid of Rager. I get 6,500. Oh, that gets me Allen Robinson or Lockett. That, folks, look at this baby. It all came together. Wow. That could be pure sex. Now, let me just see what Thielen. 6,700, another great play in that area, but I like Robinson more. Oh, man, left with no salary. I think that thing right there is pretty sexy. I mean, obviously the ugliest part is this, but if I get a touchdown from Thomas and a touchdown from Moore and that stack works out, and let me just say, like, who could I go instead of Moore if what wide receivers were in that range again? Ridley, 6,100, save some money. So there are guys you could consider over Moore. Lockett, if I go cheaper, Allen, Chark, if I wanted some. But then Edelman 6K is also interesting as well. But to me, I really like this. Now, I don't get the Raiders player in right here to stack across the other side for my GPP. And that run it back style mentality has been a big winner for people. So that's something I want to consider. But I look at this and I'm just like, who do I get rid of? I would probably be Eckler for Jacobs. And I'm looking at Eckler as probably a top 3 play against Cincinnati, the way we saw him light it up. No Melvin Gordon, unless it's a very clear 3-headed nightmare, he has more value than anybody. All these running backs are great right here. So I could go Josh Jacobs, save a couple hundred. That could get me Thielen instead of Moore, but I don't know. I'm just going to save this. This was the first gut reaction lineup. I think it's a beauty. I'm definitely going to toss some money, and clearly I have a deposit I need to make. Haven't been running so hot on DFS NBA. I don't know why I'm doing it. I don't know a fucking thing about basketball. It's sheer addiction, folks. So that's where I go on that. Kenny G, let me just go back now to this screen. Kenny G underpriced. So now it's a ask me anything type. If you have any other questions, the rest of it's open mailbag. So Kenny G was underpriced. I don't remember. Let me go back into his price. He didn't stick to me compared to some of these other guys. I'd rather straight up have Golladay. I mean, I have Allen Robinson. Oh, 6,200, Kendall. You're right. I mean, that's definitely a good one to point out is Kenny G at 6,200. So that could definitely get you some flexibility. I might have him a higher straight up than DJ Moore. So then that gets me a few $100 to play with. Maybe I'm going to save this one, but I like that call, Kendall. That's an intriguing one to shout out for sure. Not sure if anybody else saw any lineups that they really liked as well. But yeah, that's my first look at the DraftKings prices, mixed in with some buzzy news from the time, a half and half. Let me know what you thought of that. If you'd rather me just dive right into the featured segments and not really go through the news, cool with that. How often would you actually tune in the once a week type of show, a couple a week, every day? I'm on summer break for 3 more weeks, and I am more than down to just do live streams, shoot the fantasy stuff with you guys, do the mock drafts as you suggested. I'm game for it all. So if you enjoy stuff, give me ideas. And if any feedback, message it on here, DM me. It's really helpful. And if you tuned in, if you liked it and you don't mind checking out the Fantasy Fullback Dive, I think it's well worth your while. Some of the best interviews, I think, in the industry. I don't mean to toot our own horn, but we've just been incredibly blessed to have Evan Silva, Scott Barrett, Graham Barfield. I don't want to miss anybody. Elliot, Chris, C.D. Carter coming out today. And so many fantastic minds. Pete Overzet had an awesome, hilarious interview. I had Scott Hansen on early this offseason. You want to get inside that guy's brain? Of course you do. Nonstop ball of energy. So check out ffbdpod.com. Our guy CJ putting in great work, making show notes so it looks good. If you prefer videos, you can just click highlights on his notes. Sam, a ton of people doing great work to make it as digestible where you want it, how you want it. So shout out to the pod team. You guys have been crushing it. I'd love for you guys to check it out. And the best way you could help me personally, if you're not begging, but if you rate and review, and we can somehow bump up in our iTunes rankings, we're getting solid downloads, but I really think genuinely it's one of the best podcasts out there. And we have some great guests lined up to wrap it out. Mike Wright is coming out this week. We've got some awesome interviews still. So subscribe, check it out. Let me know what you think. That's the best way to help us out right now. And of course, if there's anybody you're not facing in leagues and you want to share out our stuff, we got it. All right. Thank you, Tunes. You love the dive. I appreciate it. Let's get to your question. And any other questions, get them in now. There's still a handful of you in there. So if you have any questions, let me know. I got pick 5 in my draft this year. What I have been mocking, it has been giving me Zeke, which I doubt will fall. If it's Zeke, it's a no-brainer. Like that, lock it in. I think there's a lock button like 4. 5's a really tricky one, so I love that you asked this. This is going to be a good little combo here. So it's tricky, right? So I'm going to lock in at the top. Christian McCaffrey, nobody else. Saquon Barkley's within your top 2 or 3, as well as Zeke. Those are like my no-brainer 3. If you're going floor, I think there's a stronger case for Zeke than people make over Saquon. I have Saquon higher because the ceiling is just through the roof, especially if that offense takes another step forward with Daniel Jones. But the Zeke floor is unquestionable. Like it is the highest possible floor. So those 3, you can't really do anybody else at the top of your drafts. Now it becomes an intriguing tier here of like, do I go at 4 and 5 and 6? Am I going Dalvin Cook, number 2 in points per game last year, gets Gary Kubiak, an even better zone schemer, the guy who Stefanski learned under, has been historically unbelievable for running backs. I love him there. I love Derrick Henry there, especially if you're in a half or standard league. Probably going to lead the league in rushing, although my bet's Nick Chubb. But tons of touchdown upside. I mean, the guy was the number 2 running back in fantasy once Ryan Tannehill took over. So, I mean, once he had a competent quarterback that just kept the offense moving, kept them on the field, Derrick Henry's got some very real upside. Now, Dion Lewis is also gone. So if we just get a handful more targets, it could go a huge way. The guy's averaged over 10 yards per catch. In particular, I think he led the league in yards off screen passes, like per screen pass. Obviously didn't have enough to lead it in total yards. But the man has been fantastic when used. He's clearly not a McCaffrey, but without Dion Lewis now there, Darrington Evans will probably fill the spot. But if we just get a handful of more screens, if this offense takes another step forward, it could be a monstrous season. So Derrick Henry, if those guys are gone, it comes down to maybe Kamara or Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I'm not going Michael Thomas, even full PPR. So I think the value's in the bell cow. I think he could take a step back this year. There's just so much depth at receiver. I have to go for the bell cow. So to me, it's coming down to I take Michael Thomas out of the equation. If it's Kamara, if it's Dalvin Cook, if it's Derrick Henry, the other guy I lump into that conversation is Clyde Edwards-Helaire, we talked about earlier. Probably the lowest floor, actually definitely the lowest floor of any of those, and could take the longest to get you started. But if and when he becomes that 70% snapback, which could be from week 1, I mean, there's every week 2 touchdown upside, every week 5 catch upside, every week 70 to 100 total yard upside in a Pat Mahomes offense. Like they're going to never come off the field. And he's going to see probably 15 to 20 touches every week in there. So once he has that roll down, I don't know how long it will take. My guess is not very long. It might take you a week, might take you 2. You might need to be a little patient if DeAndre Washington decides to be annoying. But ultimately, it's going to be his job too. So it comes down to those 4 for me. I've laid you out the options, Tunes. I don't know who you tell me it's full PPR, so that's good to know. You tell me who you're leaning. Out of those guys, I'd probably go Dalvin Cook as long as he shows up and is ready to go for camp. He's probably my favorite out of all those. I have him at 4 overall. If he's gone, Derrick Henry is full PPR changes it. It does. It has to. I mean, it truly has to change it. So full PPR, I think you're looking at Kamara. I mean, that's the easiest recommendation for me to make, as the floor is high, the ceiling is just as high as anybody else as well. Ultimately, I like Hilaire's ceiling better than Kamara, so I might put Clyde Edwards-Helaire above him. That's why 5 is tricky. I'd almost rather have 7 and just let whoever falls fall. And even Joe Mixon has to be somewhat considered over here. And yeah, with full PPR, as you say, you're leaning Kamara. I also agree. I think that's where I lean with the full PPR setting. It is tough though. It is very, very tough. And good luck making that choice, because that's not an easy one at 5. Let's see how training camp's developing. If Clyde Edwards-Helaire is like a clear cut, like he's week 1 starter, he's going to be the guy. We probably have to go him. Like that's who I probably go at least. But we'll see. We'll see. For now, the safer route, if you were drafting today, I would probably go Kamara because the floor and the ceiling are both so high. And if Dalvin Cook falls, I think I go him though. Full PPR, Kamara does get interesting, but yeah, if Cook falls, as much as that injury risk though, that's the lower floor too. That's a hard choice, Tunes. That 5th pick is one of the toughest to make. I think you got to clear cut your first 3. If you're at the bottom of the draft, your take of whichever of those 2 running backs you love, whether it's Sanders, Eckler, whether it's Drake, Drake and who else is in that? Sanders. I mean, Chubb. Any of those guys, you go in 2 of those guys. Your kind of plan is laid out for you. Bell cow. At 5, it gets trickier. But I have a hard time, as safe as Thomas is, as if you want the most guaranteed thing of the fantasy season. Okay, that's baked into pick 5. You can get it. It's tougher to make up the running back points if you get that true bell cow. In my opinion, the most valuable commodity in fantasy. Alrighty, folks. Thanks so much for tuning in. Of course, again, if there's any type of feedback you have, you can DM me, you can message it on here. I'm all about learning and improving on these and where we can hit you up. Please stay tuned for where the feedback I put out on Twitter. It's going to be a couple series of polls. Would love to kind of know how I can make these the best possible for you, what time's best possible for you. But this was a blast. Hopefully you guys baked, and enjoyed the fantasy banter. I know I sure did. So thanks so much for tuning in, guys. Check us out, rotostreetjournal.com. We breed and feed fantasy wolves, ffbdpod.com, where we pave your path to 2020 titles. We'll be doing more of these and hopefully practicing out a guest in the near future, how it looks with 2 of us on at once. I'm looking forward to testing that feature out soon. Alrighty, guys. Cheers. Have a great rest of your Tuesday.